Hello there, I'm that Metroid guy. So, this is a bit different, huh? I figured this would be better than standard gameplay in the background, as you kinda have someone to look at, but I'll interchange between the two whenever I feel like it. I want to thank the artist who made these sketches, Gilherm. I hope I'm saying that name right. This art style of his really caught my eye, and I just had to have something in it while using it for videos. And yeah, I do intend to have these for discussion type videos going forward. Thank you again to Gilherm for these sketches. A link to his Twitter is in the description. This is going to piss off a lot of people. Just for me, so much as even mentioning Samus should have a redesign has got people riled up, but damn it, I need to talk about it. This video has been a long time coming, and it's easily been one of the most difficult ones I've ever had to make, for two reasons. One, I had to marathon every Metroid game I have in preparation for this video. Two, I wasn't sure how to go about presenting this. Do I want to be funny? Do I want to be straight to the point? But then I figured, just be me. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and organise and structure my thoughts as best as I can. I'll have timestamps too if you want to go straight to what you came here for. I do want to say though, I'd appreciate it if you stuck around and watched the whole video so you can get an idea as to how I'm going to go about all this. And naturally, I'm going to start off with a little disclaimer. I am not an expert in character design. I've studied it a lot, but I am not a professional. I don't draw or design characters for a living. That's why I commissioned an artist to help me out on this project. This is Applecork. He's an artist who has helped out YouTubers like TB Skyan on his redesigns for League of Legends characters, and that's how I discovered this artist. Applecork's Warrior Ash design specifically is what made me want them as the artist for this project. What good is criticism if you haven't got anything to show what you feel is an improvement, right? So go follow Applecork, their work is amazing. Links are in the description. Another thing I want to say is that there is no such thing as a perfect character design. It's something I struggle to accept, being such a logical and relatively firm person and everything, but I've tried to come to terms with it. It's why I'm going to say right here that all of this is entirely my opinion and based on my reasons, no one else's. You are also totally within your right to like whatever Samus design you like, because I know being judged for that doesn't feel great at all. I just hope that when you hear what I have to say that you will have an open mind and see my points for what they are. I can only provide what I feel is a better design for Samus than the one we have right now, while explaining my reasons as to why I feel that way. Oh, and the reason the title is the way it is? The algorithm. YouTube likes titles like that. It should be giving Samus a redesign that I think is better and relates more accurately to Samus's character. But that's not very clickable, is it? Anyway, now with all that out of the way, let's get onto the video itself. In the ancient and distant past of 1986, Samus was introduced into the world through Metroid. This game was one of the three pillars of Nintendo's gaming revolution, along with Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. Samus was a space hunter, the greatest of all of them, and he was tasked to destroy Mother Brain. So the kids at the time played this and beat it. But then some started to spread rumours that Samus was in fact a woman, and you find out by beating the game quickly. Which was impossible, there's no such thing as female protagonists in video games, and then holy shit! Titty! Needless to say, it was a bit of a big deal back then. To us now it seems obvious, and to some, maybe even annoying to have to be constantly nagged that the character you're playing as is female. But remember, this was the 80s, and games sounded like... Funnily enough, this wasn't how Samus was originally supposed to be. At first, she was an android, hence the name, and it was only near the end of Metroid's development that a developer said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if the character you were playing as was a woman?" The team held a vote, they all said yes, and thus a legend was born, just like that. Since then, it's been kind of a tradition in the franchise to have Samus take off a power suit if the player beats the game quick enough. I mean, that's how players found out she was a woman in the first place. Though over the years, Nintendo's been a bit braver with Samus showing up without a power suit and with varying designs. More on that later. Naturally, there wasn't much in the way of story for Samus. She was tasked with destroying Mother Brain and the Metroids. That's kind of it. But thankfully, we can tell what kind of character Samus is just by observing her, and Samus' story would evolve and become more complex over time. So, what is that story exactly? Well, Samus hasn't got the most original or awe-inspiring backstory by today's standards. She was a 3-year-old girl on planet K2L. Perfectly innocent. I'm sure nothing could go wrong. Oh, everyone's dead. Including Samus' parents at the hands of Ridley and the Space Pirates. Samus's mother directly saved her from death, and Samus was the sole survivor of the raid. It gets the job done and will be important later on, so mark it on your checklist. For over a decade since the attack on K2L, Samus was raised by the Chozo to become the ultimate warrior and the protector of the galaxy. She trained on the highly dangerous planet Zebes from the age of 3. She was augmented to make her chances of survival on the planet even greater, but still she trained up until she became an adult to join the Galactic Federation as a soldier. Not long after that, she became a bounty hunter. Now, if you've played the games or don't want spoilers, you could skip a bit as I'll be explaining what happens in the stories of said games. But it's still important to take notes as to what Samus does here. On her Zero mission, Samus encounters Metroids and has several battles that involve them and the space pirates afterwards. Samus even fights a corrupted version of herself and Ridley a couple times. Samus also helps save the Luminoth from extinction and eventually destroys Phazon. Though it isn't until her mission to SR-388 that she has a major story shift. She was tasked with destroying all of the Metroid organisms on the planet to wipe them out once and for all. However, after killing the Queen Metroid, Samus encountered the baby. No, we're not doing that. She was going to kill it, but then the Metroid's actions were not aggressive, but gentle and soft. It saw Samus as its mother. Quick side note, I've always interpreted this scene as Samus seeing her younger self in the Metroid, and her current self as Ridley. Both Samus and Ridley invaded a homeworld. They wiped out everything on it, leaving only one child. While Ridley attempted to kill Samus, Samus chose to spare the infant Metroid and take a page out of the Chozo's wing and see if the Metroid could better civilization. And that's what she did. Until Ridley came along and stole it, that is. Anyway, back to the video. Samus goes back onto Zebes, where the space pirates have been busy and made a new base since her Zero mission. Just as Samus was about to destroy it, a giant Metroid attacks Samus. But when she's about to die, the Metroid stops and makes a familiar sound. Feeling guilty, the Super Metroid, that's what I call it, leaves the area. As Samus battles a reborn Mother Brain, she gets injured and is on the brink of death. But then the Super Metroid comes in and attacks the Dino Brain. Yeah, mess him up, Squishy. Oh, you healing me? Oh, that's quite sick, actually. Baby? Baby, wait, no! Samus escaped Zebus after saving some animals that helped her out in her adventure. That scene still hits hard. Yes, we're going to talk about that game, but not in the way you'd expect. It's no secret that I view Other M as not canon, and no, not because I hate it. If I rated canonicity based on my feelings for a game, this sure as shit wouldn't be canon either.
What the fuck even?
But that discussion will be for a whole other video. So to keep on track, what I'll do instead is treat Other M as if it were given the Star Wars Legends treatment. Not canon, but still exists to pull resources from. After the battle on Zebus, Samus is treated by the Federation, cleaned up, and then goes on her way. At some point, Samus arrives on the battleship and meets 7th Squad, being led by Adam Malkovich. Samus is brought into the squad and aids them in figuring out what happened on the station. Other M also talks about Samus' history with Adam and her time in the Federation, to which she left because Adam sacrificed his brother Ian to save a civilian shuttle despite Samus' pleas to let her save him. Throughout the game, Samus has emotional toils about Adam, a traitor in the 7th Squad, and eventually comes across Ridley. This sparks a panic into her, thanks to what he did on K2L. Adam is attacked, Anthony is seemingly killed, Ridley escapes after a brief melee with Samus. Samus then goes to Sector 0, based on what Madeline says about Metroids there. Samus is then attacked by Adam, who then sacrifices himself to save Samus from going into the sector, blowing up Sector 0. Samus still finds the Queen Metroid, oh I'll get to you, and defeats it. Samus meets the real Madeline, and then learns the one from earlier is a Mother Brain android. Speak of the devil, MB threatens both Samus and Madeline, to which the Federation arrive and actually carry out theirs to MB. Anthony lives, and Samus collects Adam's helmet to remember him by. The entirety of Fusion is about Samus taking orders from a computer named Adam by Samus, and being powerless to stop an ever-present threat. Naturally, Samus, as well as the player, hates these things, but here's the genius of Fusion. It's by design, because they are linked and it plays into the story. I know there are a lot of new people to the Metroid fanbase ever since the reveal of Dread, so here's a timestamp to avoid spoilers. It's not a jump scare, don't worry. But no, really, skip ahead if you don't want spoilers. At the beginning of Metroid Fusion, Samus returns to SR388 to guide a BSL research team, acting as a bodyguard. Samus encounters an organism she's never seen before and later finds out the identity of it only after it's fused into a nervous system. The X-Parasite. It infects Samus, making her lose consciousness and nearly kills her in the process. To save Samus' life, the Federation creates a Metroid vaccine, as the Metroids turned out to be the natural predators of the X. And Samus wiped out the Metroids.
Good job.
After going through surgeries and then being injected with the Metroid vaccine, Samus was saved, though at the cost of her physical appearance and previous suit. Though sometime after, Samus is sent to the BSL station to investigate an unexplained explosion. The Federation gifts Samus a ship, but a condition of that was to also take the onboard AI and follow its directive, which Samus hates. And because the AI reminds Samus of a gruff CO, she names it Adam. Throughout the game, Adam is ordering Samus around and Samus has no choice. She lands in the BSL station, a facility that researches life on SR388 and a myriad of other environments. An explosion has rattled the station, and it's up to Samus to figure out what caused it. If there was ever a middle finger in the form of a creature, this would be it. The SAX gets involved, and it's something that wasn't anticipated by either Samus or the Galactic Federation. Adam is affiliated with the Federation, and so his priority shifts to keep Samus from running into the SAX while also hindering Samus' abilities, and by extension, the players. Not for anything arbitrary or even no reason, but to buy time for the Galactic Federation to arrive and retrieve the SAX. Mind-blowing. Naturally, Samus lets out her frustrations, referring to the computer as Adam. It's confused, but then starts to turn over to Samus' side, to her surprise, helping her in destroying the X and the Metroids on the station from the galaxy. Until Dread happens. Welcome new people, you missed the epic plot of how Samus canonically drops an F-bomb. But anyway, the opening of Fusion shows Samus having surgery and getting a new suit as a result of the X attack on her. What's curious is that Samus' suit is technically an extension of herself and is connected to her physically, which is why a good amount of her suit couldn't be removed. Thankfully, the Dread reports have confirmed that the suit is regenerating, which is pretty cool and makes sense given it's slightly biological. But again, another thing to check. God, that took forever. The story stuff is done now.
But I'm not done yet!
There's still a lot to talk about, and the next thing to talk about is... Now, I know this has been a lot to take in, but I can't skip over any details. It doesn't help that a good portion of the people who have talked to about this are just blatantly wrong in their takes. Okay, so you're telling me that Samus is an emotionless robot who doesn't care for anyone. I mean, I can see where you're coming from, except did you play the fucking games? Did you? Especially Echoes and Metroid 2? Echoes to me really highlights Samus' humanity, and the first 30 minutes of the game shows her real values. She responds to a call for help from the Federation and investigates where soldiers went missing. She finds their dead bodies and pays her respects to them. That was her entire reason for going to Aether, to see what happened to the soldiers there. Then Mothman. Umos, one of the last remaining Luminoth on the entire planet, pleads to Samus for help and save them from extinction from the purple spiders. It got so bad for the Luminoth that they had to send children out to fight and die to buy themselves more time for any semblance of hope. Samus, without question, accepts the help and wipes out the Ing. She then leaves without saying a single word, only giving a wave in farewell. That is Samus Aran, and it just makes me so happy. But I think there's a moment that most people know when it comes to Samus' humanity, and that's when Samus chooses to spare the infant Metroid as described earlier. This scene is pivotal to both Samus' story and the story of the franchise since Metroid 2. The next several games in the chronology revolve around this specific connection between Samus and this Metroid. Samus isn't a heartless monster like Ridley, and so she spares the Metroid to see if it can better civilization. A little side note, but Samus is also the biggest and most curious nerd in the galaxy. Those scans? Yeah, Samus has notes on all of them. She likes her tech too, you can tell that because she has a big old smirk under there. It's kind of adorable. Okay, back to serious talk. Samus' resolve and perseverance is nothing to scoff at. To even wear the suit she uses takes an immense amount of mental energy, and she struts around like it's nothing. This woman goes through so much, but just keeps going. Her focus and will are unshakable, and her physical strength illustrates this well. Samus can pull apart Ridley's jaws, throw titans around like it's nothing, and straight up manhandles giants. This is what all those years of training on Zebus were for. But most importantly, Samus is a warrior, the one that the Chozo put all of their faith into. The Chozo died for her. She is their legacy in every way. She wears the armor of their soldiers, she has the wisdom of their elders, and the blood of their scientists' creations. And she accepts it, and the responsibility that comes with it. Now, we've got a fairly established identity and story for Samus Aran. So, how does her character design communicate all of that? It is a shock to exactly 0% of the global population that I have major problems with Samus' character design. In the original version of this script, I went on a major anger-fueled tangent about the subject, to the point I was working up an actual sweat while typing. But for the sake of my shirts, I'll be a bit more respectful this time around. So, to answer the question a minute ago, how does Samus' story and personality translate into her design? It doesn't. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't at all. Samus Aran, the famed bounty hunter, the ultimate warrior and one of the most badass and reputable characters in the industry. And yet she looks like Barbie? Allow me to curse this one time. What the fuck? It doesn't help that every other game Samus' build and overall appearance is a major overhaul. Some a tad bulkier than others, somewhere. Samus, my girl, please eat something. The drastic changes in design signal to me that there is a fundamental lack of understanding or care as to what Samus's role, personality, story, and overall character is within Metroid. As she currently stands right now, let's use her latest design as the standard, because let's face it, the design has been the same for over a decade at this point. Samus is just the most bog-standard, blonde-haired, big-titted action lady. That's what she is. It is so boring. There are countless other characters in various forms of media with this exact design, and Samus does nothing to distinguish herself from any of them, but none so obviously as Barbie. It is scary how exact these two look when they have two completely contrary character identities. One is a fashion model whose purpose is to advertise clothing and other beauty products. The other is an intergalactic bounty hunter who wrestles monsters for a living. You would never be able to tell which one is which if you didn't already know. If anything, you'd probably say they're both the former identity. I know some people are going to have a go at me for saying these sorts of things, criticizing something that is art. I know, art is subjective, blah blah. But when you have a character that is depicted in a very specific way and their design is wholly contrary to their portrayal, to me, that is flat out bad character design because it isn't even plausible for that character to look like that. Am I saying Samus's design is inherently bad? No. The big sexy lady design is very common. Designs like that have been done time, and time, and time, and time, and time again. All with varying degrees of success. What I am saying is that it is bad for Samus specifically, and I feel pretty confident taking this seriously because the games take themselves just as seriously. Except for Samus's design, of course. This isn't about realism either. It's about believability or even plausibility within the franchise. We're supposed to take Samus and Metroid seriously, but when she looks like this, I really can't do that because I just see Barbie and not an intergalactic warrior. Again, this isn't about realism. Is Samus turning into a ball of energy realistic? Not really, no. Is it believable or even plausible? Yes, the games go out of their way to make it so by explaining how it works in the context of its universe. There's a logic behind it, and the games must be consistent with that logic. This leads into the character designs too. They don't necessarily have to be realistic, but they have to justify their existence to make it believable. And unfortunately, Samus's design doesn't even attempt to do that. To get to the specific problems I have with Samus's design, where is her muscle? Seriously, I swear I have more muscle and I'm a cripple. How can someone who effectively wrestles giants for a living look like she has anorexia? And no, bird magic doesn't make her strong while looking like a bimbo. It lets her deal with the environments of Zebes. That's it. Plus she's been trained to be a warrior from the age of 3. That should be apparent just by looking at her. Here is the only time Samus has ever been presented with muscle. It's not perfect, but it's easily the best look Samus has ever officially had, and it was from Super Metroid back in 1994. There's muscle, albeit pixelated, but it's there. She looks as strong and capable as an athlete or wrestler, unlike this war crime. That isn't muscle, those are just thick-ass thighs. And her breasts are the size of watermelons, even more so in-game. And don't say all of Samus' strength is in her power suit. She went through training just to wear the damn thing, and that downplays Samus' character and feats to an extreme degree, making it feel like anyone could just wear the suit and be Samus. The games make a point of showing that that's impossible. Here's the next obvious thing. Really? This one is just inexcusable. The designers even listed that Samus shouldn't have high heels. Nice to see that held up for a whole 3 games, Nintendo. And no, the high heels in the Metroid games are not jet heels. They're not spring-heeled, they're not like Chell's boots. They're just normal-ass high heels. Why would a warrior wear high heels to battle, first of all? But second, why would she wear them when you can't even see them? Yes, she wears them under the suit too. Just what? Last time I checked, Samus was a practical character. She wasn't a sexual one either. High heels are explicitly sexual. That's why sexual characters have them in the first place. Samus isn't even remotely sexual or even about fashion. So why would she wear something about both when you can't even see them most of the time? Oh, and just try and pull off even some of Samus's feats with high heels. Don't actually do that because you could get injured and I'm not going to be held responsible. Needless to say, it's very dangerous to yourself. But even Smash's high-heeled Samus is wrong because of her high heels' inherent sexual nature. You want to know why Bayonetta's gun high heels work? Because they're over the top and sexual, which is exactly what Bayonetta as a franchise and character is all about. Neither Samus nor Metroid are any of these, as much as people like to argue that they are. Metroid goes out of its way to explain things in an understandable, believable, and even plausible way, be it through visuals or written text. Samus with high heels is none of these things and solely exists for sex appeal, which is wholly against Samus's character. The same goes for the beauty spot and makeup. The clue as to why should be very obvious. Alright, those are the major design issues out of the way. I've calmed down a little, I've got my cup of tea, so let's go into the other issues, but not deal breakers. To talk something good about Other M, it gave us one of, if not the best design choices for Samus in recent memory, and that's giving Samus short hair. I know, I just praised Other M. I am nothing but an outsider. But seriously, Samus with short hair only makes sense. She wears a helmet all the time. Why would she have long hair? Her body isn't changed while she's in a suit, so her hair would just be in the way. There are so many moments where I'll see her hair and just wonder, how does it all fit in that helmet? Again, it isn't a deal breaker, but having long hair doesn't really make sense for Samus. Another minor gripe I have is that Samus' skin is perfect. To a fault. Samus is a battle-hardened warrior, as we've already talked about. She's the last survivor of a devastating pirate raid and had intense surgery done to her to save her life. There should be scarring, but there isn't a single scratch. Samus isn't indestructible, so having scars would highlight her humanity and mortality while also showing she has history. A slightly bigger thing I'm sad about that isn't represented in her design though, is that there's no link to a power suit on her body. I mean, sure, you have the markings on the Zero suit, but not Samus herself. Samus and her power suit are one and the same. For her to even activate it, these lights light up and then the suit forms around her. It would be really cool to see the connection be really clear by having these markings on her skin rather than just the Zero suit. Now this isn't really a design issue per se, but more of a body language inconsistency. I've recently noticed that how Samus acts, carries herself, and even stands is relatively inconsistent between when she wears her power suit and when she doesn't. They almost feel like totally different characters. I don't know, it's just another nitpick. And really, that's kind of it in terms of problems. I don't even have a problem with the Zero suit itself. What it's come to represent, however, I absolutely despise. It's just a latex suit. That's all it is, and it's all it's ever presented to be. It's for sexual appeal. It doesn't help that it's vacuum sealed around every pore of Samus' skin. And look, I know why Samus is designed the way that she is. She is wholly inspired by aliens Ripley and Kim Basinger, despite the latter being a femme fatale. Which isn't what Samus is, by the way. The Zero suit design in Zero Mission at least serves as a major contrast to highlight Samus' weakness without the power suit, and the color contrast highlights this fact. And for that purpose, it makes sense, and can even be why so many view this design as a whole to be good. But the weakness isn't felt because Samus looks like Barbie in the game. You, the player, feel powerless because you're left with a stun pistol, and nothing else. This shift in gameplay actively changes how you approach the game, and you being able to die quickly if you're not careful emphasizes this. You lose so much of what you've taken for granted, even down to the first ability you ever get in the game. People who call the Morph Ball useless really didn't play this section of Zero Mission. At the end of the day, these are all design choices that I happen to disagree with, but I hope you can understand my reasons as to why I do. So, to list them out in a neat way, Samus has no muscle and doesn't look like a battle-hardened warrior overall. Samus' design is sexualized in a way that is contrary to the character and serves no clear purpose or function for her. Samus' body and suit don't appear to have a true connection. Samus is just Barbie for no other reason than appeal. If these problems are alleviated, then hopefully we will have made what I feel is a better design for Samus Aran. This is a mod for Super Smash Bros. Melee called Smash 2, and in it is Suitless Samus, which is basically about what you'd expect. However, the design is easily one of the best interpretations of the character and shows that the idea to give Samus an arguably more appropriate design has been around for a while. I'm just another cog in that wheel. But still, given that this design was based on what I feel is the best official design in the games, it's not a shock that this is as good as it is. And no, Samus still has her arm. I found this relatively recently too. I had no idea this was even a thing until a few months ago as of this video's release. I'm still surprised that a design this good was so hidden from me, though given this is from a mod, it shouldn't be too shocking. But again, major props to the creators for this design. It's easily one of the best interpretations of Samus I've ever seen. She's a giant too, as she should be. So overall, really good take and a superb design. So you might be asking yourself, what's the point in making this video then? If such a great design of Samus already exists somewhere, then why bother doing this? Well, believe it or not, it's this design that propelled me to want to make this video even more. Not only so I can show that a design exists, but to also highlight that there is no such thing as a perfect character design. I'm going to keep mentioning this because it's true. Different people will have different priorities when bringing their takes for a character's design. There may be things that I deem unimportant that are more pronounced in others' designs, while in others will have more extreme designs. Each design is valid, and it's good to look at why we feel those designs may execute on the character's story and themes better, or whether they deviate from it deliberately. There's no one way to create a character design or resolve design problems. I feel that both my design and the suitless Samus design from Smash 2 are better than what Nintendo has put out, as they address the design issues we've laid out, despite being different designs overall. And speaking of different designs, a little tangent. Whenever I've brought up Samus's design problems, I've had a few people try and justify those issues by saying, well, if Samus can't look sexy, then why is it okay for characters like Link, Shulk, Daisy, Bayonetta, or Palutena to look sexy? First of all, this video isn't about them, but I'm going to do what I can to preemptively answer these guaranteed comments. Second of all those characters have some reason to look conventionally attractive or sexy. Link cross-dresses to slip into Gerudo Town, and so has to look relatively feminine or even sexy to do so. There is that justification. Palutena is a goddess, and naturally, human-looking deities are perceived as symbols of beauty and sexuality. Bayonetta wears sexuality in over-the-top style with her hair alone. Should be obvious why it works for her. Daisy looking conventionally attractive is just a byproduct of being a princess. That's just how they are perceived. They're the standards of beauty. And Shulk? Okay, that one I have no clue about because I really don't care. That doesn't mean the designs are perfect. I would like if Link had more scars to highlight his vulnerability and history 100 years before he was sealed away. I would also like a touch more muscle, but not as much as the Twilight Princess incarnation. And we have Daisy. I wish that she was slightly darker or at least tan to show her connection to her desert kingdom. It would also be good for her to be a bit more toned to highlight her tomboy attitude and sporty nature. I know it sounds like I'm saying that every character would be better if they were muscular. Of course, I have a natural bias to muscular characters. But that doesn't mean it's better for every character. Peach, for example, would not work with a muscular build. She isn't a fighter or anything like that. She's first and foremost a princess, and that's okay for her to be just that, a sweet pretty princess. The onus then is on other princesses to be different, like Daisy and Rosalina. The latter of which I wish had a more creative and possibly extreme design, like a galaxy in her abdomen, separating her upper and lower bodies, like in this piece for a Janna redesign done by Veralco. Something like this I think would work well for Rosalina, as it emphasizes that space motherly vibe she gives off. It's also important to know when something is better for a character or when it's just preference. Sheik, I find, is near perfect. That being said, her depictions are very interesting to me, as I actually prefer the more traditionally feminine design in Hyrule Warriors. And here's where the crazy part is. This design probably doesn't fit the character as well as her design in Ocarina of Time 3D. It's more feminine than the original game Sheik, but not as much as the Hyrule Warriors design. It being more in the middle of masculine and feminine makes it a very interesting design, and even provides the idea that there's a dual personality and hidden feature to the character, maybe even allowing the player to have a slight hint of familiarity. But I still prefer the warrior's design just because it looks nice. But now, let's get into the real reason why you're all here. I'd been thinking about this design for some time. I listed factors of Samus's character and story that I felt was important to highlight through her design, and so I approached Applecock with these design concepts in mind. The design I went with is an aged Samus, one that could potentially be behind the visor at the time of Metroid Dread. Her battles extend beyond her life. She has had tremendous loss, close calls to her own life, and didn't come out the other end unscathed. This is by no means the only design concept I had. I had many other concepts where Samus had some lasting effects of her corruption to Phazon, another where being integrated with both Chozo and Metroid DNA had visual traits. I was even toying with the idea of completely removing her right arm. I was even tempted to do all of these in one go, but I decided against that as I felt it strayed too far away from the main goal of this redesign, that being to resolve the design issues Samus has while still being clearly identifiable as Samus. So it may be disappointing to some, but this redesign is kind of safe in a way. It doesn't go too far. It doesn't give Samus red eyes, a missing right arm, or massive burn scars across the face. To reiterate, the primary goal with this redesign was to have it still look like Samus, but one that I believe makes sense for the character. That's why her face is largely intact and identical to her previous designs. Speaking of which, let's have a look at those for a minute. Samus is a very expressive character, not so much through dialogue, but her facial expressions and body language. I wanted to have that emphasized here, showing different expressions to Samus. Neutral, focused or serious, curious, and my personal favorite, sympathetic. This expression is Samus to me, the calm, yet understanding eyes and the slight smile. It's like a child just told her about their favorite toy, which is very appropriate given the theme of Metroid as a whole is motherhood. This is very much a motherly expression to me. Back onto the actual design itself, I wanted to tackle the design issues we listed earlier. The lack of a warrior look, sexualization with no purpose, while also adding a few key details. One thing I requested was to have the back of Samus's casual outfit be exposed to show the symbols that light up when the power suit activates. The clothing as a whole is Samus's casual outfit from Fusion. And now to show off probably my favorite thing about this concept. This was all Applecock. He had the idea that instead of jet heels, Samus could have a jet attachment that would function the same as the jet heels from Smash. These would also act as the high jump or space jump boots, coming from the heel of the power suit. This was an amazing compromise to the high heel issue. And as you probably noticed, scarring and short hair were added to the design. Another thing to take note of is Samus's wider core compared to Super Metroid's design. The non-existent waist always bothered me and didn't highlight her strength or ability well, so bulking her core was a good step. The main inspiration behind this design was CrossFit athletes. These athletes are incredibly agile and powerful, and it's quite an inspiration to see, especially with one as young as 17. Like, what the hell? And so, this is the final render for the redesign. I am extremely happy with how it turned out, and it is by far my favourite interpretation of Samus. I mean, of course I'd say that, but I genuinely feel that this design highlights all of Samus's traits, characteristics and story just by looking at it. She has history, she's practical, compassionate and curious, but most importantly of all, the ultimate warrior. There's a little more. I had Applecork draw Samus in various poses. A lot of them are based on poses that she's been in before. Others are original. You might be able to tell which ones are which. I want to talk about this one specifically though. Originally Samus was going to just be flexing her arms to highlight her muscle, but I felt that that showed a much more show-off type of personality, and so the arm was turned into the arm cannon instead. This was to show that she's much more into her gear than her appearance, as we've seen her be, while looking ready for a fight. I even had Applecork draw the Samus design based on her different outfits, including the traditional Zero suit, complete with the usual hairstyle, another in a more hard sci-fi outfit, the classic Super Metroid outfit, and just for fun, the Justin Bailey design. And there you have it, a take on what Samus could and I think should look like. Again, just to remind everyone, there is no such thing as a perfect character design. I am not a character designer and nor is this an objectively better design than what already exists. It is entirely in my opinion that this design is what best suits the character given the intended goals, that being to alleviate the design problems we discussed earlier while still clearly looking like Samus. And of course, you are completely within your right to prefer the designs that are official and even dislike this design. I just hope that you can at least see and understand my perspective when I say that this, to me, is a much better design for Samus Aran. Holy hell, thank you so very much for watching. This video was a major undertaking and the only time I've had to do something on this scale was for the Sacred Icons video. I've been meaning to make this video for what feels like an eternity and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm curious as to what you guys have to say about all this. This is something I feel pretty strongly about, so I'm open to any feedback as long as it's constructive. Once again, a huge shout out to the artists who helped me out with this video. Gilherm for the avatar, and to Applecork for the Samus redesign. This video would not have been possible without them. So please go check out their links in the description below. So now that this is out of the way, what's next for me? I'm sure there was something new that was revealed. Something about Metroid. Something new since I started working on this video.